package system just crashed.
Oh no, who's responsible for this?
Who's responsible for this?
Get Dynatrace, observability and AI ops to automate your cloud. See how at Dynatrace.com.
There we are. Well, welcome everyone to another season of Getting to Know Dynatrace. Now, we're working with a new audio-visual system. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my side, right? So I think that's a problem with me. Hey, I've got a new person attending today who's going to be giving us our demo. That's Brendan Steiner. Brendan, do you hear the echoing, or is it just sounding straight through?
There's a little bit of an echo.
A little bit of an echo. All right, so let's just play around with this for a second. And how does it sound now? A little bit better. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone to another season of Getting to Know Dynatrace. All right, this sounds like I'm repeating myself because I'm still hearing that echo.
Yeah, there's still an echo there.
Yeah, there's still this echo going on here. But hopefully we can get everyone to start seeing my screen. There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Oh, and Brendan, can you hear me now? And I'm not sounding like I'm echoing?
Yeah,
hey,
the echo
that's awesome.
there.
All right. We got that all sorted out. That's awesome. So, hey, folks, all right. As we've done in the past with Getting to Know Dynatrace sessions, typically what we do is we go through and we talk about some exciting new things here at Dynatrace. We've got a couple of different segments that we start things off with, and then we get right into a demo, and you folks can ask us all sorts of questions as we're doing the demo live. So let's get started. First segment is always the What's New segment. Now, it's been a while since the last time I've talked to everyone, and really the best place to go to find out what's new at Dynatrace is it's our news, our blog session. So let's actually head over there and have a quick look at some of the new exciting things that have been happening. So, the last time that we talked was just after Perform, and we announced so many exciting new things at the Perform conference. We were really excited about all of our great speakers. The session went really well. We had just amazing feedback about what was going on during Perform. But let's get caught up because it's been about a month or so. And what are some of the things that we've been talking about since Perform? If you go onto our blog site, you can see here that we've got articles where we are talking about proactive self-monitoring ensures seamless operations for Dynatrace managed at scale. Dynatrace Managed, for those people who are not familiar with it, is how Dynatrace can be deployed in an on-premise fashion. And so we've been doing a lot to actually improve the overall experience and the functioning of Dynatrace Managed. So for those folks who have issues around things like data residency, you're really concerned about where your data is being stored, Dynatrace Managed is really the correct deployment option for you. There's some other other articles that have been posted up to the blog site, including a great article about Dynatrace University and talking about how it's been operating for over a decade. Listen, I got to tell you, the content on Dynatrace University is just far out. It has streamed knowledge lesson plans for you so that you can go in and actually, basically create your own sort of tailored knowledge path within Dynatrace University. And there's all sorts of content that's on there. And ultimately, the whole goal of Dynatrace University is obviously to let you understand and know more about Dynatrace, but also set you up to a point where you could actually write an associate or professional certification so you can get Dynatrace certified. It looks great on a CV. And obviously, because of all of the momentum right now that's happening with Dynatrace in the marketplace, getting officially recognized as being certified in Dynatrace, that goes a long way. There's a whole bunch of other articles that we've been posting out to the blog site. One of the more interesting ones was, definitely this one that Wolfgang Beer posted, which is talking about how you use Dynatrace to leverage AIOps in GitHub CI pipelines. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but it's just scrolling through here. It just sort of gives you an idea as to what this content's all about. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you give this article a read. If you're using Dynatrace for DevOps, if you're using it for anything related to your pipeline, how you interact with GitHub, I highly recommend that you give that article a read. Now, going through here, you can see there's obviously Dynatrace is a very socially conscious organization. There's some really interesting articles, one from our new CEO, Rick McConnell, talking about our stance for the crisis in Ukraine. We also have articles here talking about International Women's Day. Obviously February was African American History Month, so there's some very interesting articles there on those topics as well. In terms of, really exciting, interesting articles, this one here in terms of Dynatrace providing 274% return on investment over a 3-year period. This was essentially an analysis done in this particular case by Forresters. And Forresters, what they do is they create this report that's called a TEI report. This is a total economic impact of Dynatrace. If you are really concerned about how an AIOps software intelligence platform like Dynatrace can really, help your organization and help your bottom line, you got to read this article. This goes through in detail and talks about all of the different components that can be impacted by deploying Dynatrace and how it just dramatically improves your efficiency. And then if we go back into the blog, you can see here there's all sorts of other articles in terms of updates for our managed offering, in terms of our release notes. There's a great article here by Andy Grabner. I can't say enough good things about Andy Grabner. You see him all the time on YouTube talking about Dynatrace and all sorts of interesting topics. But here he's actually describing how Dynatrace can be used to optimize the Java XPath, in this particular case, the CPU and memory performance by 98%. It's just fabulous content, fabulous stuff. So again, always, keep track of what we're doing and all the new stuff that's coming out here by looking at our blog site, looking at the product news. There's always new things coming out from Dynatrace. So let's get back to our presentation here. And what's the next segment? It's Did You Know? So we always do a Did You Know, because there's, Dynatrace is a software intelligence platform. It just has this immense breadth of capability. And so there's always things that, Dynatrace has been able to do for quite some time that people just, they didn't know, because there's just so much to know about Dynatrace. So let's talk about this week's Did You Know? And that is, did you know that Dynatrace actually has hundreds of pre-configured dashboards that you can just drop right into your Dynatrace tenant? Sharing dashboards is just ridiculously easy, and dashboards themselves, the whole configuration of the dashboard it's stored in a simple JSON file. And so one of the things that our team has done is we've actually created something called the Dynatrace BizOps Configurator. Now, if you go to GitHub, and actually you can see here that we've got this URL in place right here. We're going to drop this URL into the chat window so everyone can actually see and just click on the link. But if you go to this BizOps Configurator, what you get is effectively a list of pre-configured dashboards. Here in this particular case, there's over 118 different templates that are loaded. And some of these dashboards can be things for like doing A/B testing. Some of these dashboards could be, for example, here is dashboards related to your AWS monitoring. So these dashboards are all pre-configured. And by using this BizOps Configurator, you can simply drop them into your tenant with no effort whatsoever. But in addition to that, if you're using Dynatrace, you can also go to the Dynatrace Hub. And inside of the Dynatrace Hub, for many of the technologies that we have listed there, there are also pre-configured dashboards that are in the Dynatrace Hub that all you have to do is just simply deploy that technology into your Dynatrace instance, and that dashboard is going to automatically show up there. As an example, here we're looking at how does Dynatrace connect into, say, like and monitor Active Directory services. If you go into the actual hub and click on this, you can see here that we've got screenshots of the dashboard that automatically comes along when you enable the monitoring of Microsoft Active Directory services in your Dynatrace tenant. So that is this week's session or segment in terms of did you know? And did you know that there are hundreds of dashboards that are available for you to just drop into your Dynatrace tenant? And so that's the end of our opening segments. Always the what's new, the getting to know, or did you know segment. Now on to the real interesting part of today's talk, and that's going to be our demonstration. So I introduced him at the very beginning, but obviously with the echo, it kind of got all confused there. But this week we have Brendan Steiner, who's going to be doing our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And Brendan, we're going to let you start sharing your screen. And, Brendan, why don't you start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and then just dive into the demo.
Sure. Thanks, Jonesy. Happy to be here. So hi, everyone. I'm Brendan Steiner. I'm a solutions engineer with Dynatrace. Been with the company since 2015 now. I've been a consultant on site, many different clients. So been able to get in the weeds and really see what different companies are using Dynatrace for. And it's been amazing. So it's been a real journey.
Awesome. All right, Brendan, let's get into the demo. Let's get going.
Let's bring that up.
And so, folks, as Brendan's bringing that up, just remember, this is a live session. Feel free to ask questions as you are, watching, and we'll try our best to answer those questions as they come in. So take it away, Brendan.
Awesome. So what we have here is, the standard dashboards that you think of when you think of monitoring and observability. You got application health, your synthetic monitor health, your host health, and a bunch of other metrics that I don't want to dive too deep into. The main focus that we like to show with Dynatrace is just how easy it is to get metrics and how little configuration it takes to actually install this. So a lot of these metrics that you see here are actually out of the box, and they're thanks to what we call the 1A. So in the past, with traditional APM tools, you'd have a Java agent or a .NET agent, all these different technologies and all these different configurations that you had to change. But now with Dynatrace, you have the one agent, which just like its name, there's only one agent that you need to install. And after you install it, after a simple process restart, that's when we start get into the code level, into all of that data here. And I'll actually show that in the Smartscape. So as you can see here, these are all the dependencies that the one agent analyzed automatically throughout the entire demo environment here. So as you can see, we got a wide breadth. If I just click on one here and zoom in, you can see there's a credit card verification service. It's an Apache Tomcat. You can see the different process groups and the host it actually runs on. And if you click on the host, you can actually drill down and see the other host info. Or say if I take a web server, for example, you can even see the Easy Travel website is actually hosted from this front end service, and clicking on the host, the load balancer, you can see all the other services that it picks up as well. So I just love to show this view, and it's my background for a reason. It's because all of this is automatic, and it's such an amazing view to show. Just with no configuration, you get all of this data right out of the box. So something amazing there.
Very cool. And, very cool. Actually, hey, Brendan, let's go back to the
Sure.
Let's go back to the Smartscape for a quick second. So what I find so interesting about the Smartscape is we talk about AI all the time here at Dynatrace. And, you know, the Smartscape is actually giving us a window into the way that our AI works. Our approach to AI, it's not like classic machine learning where, you know, we basically just have like, an AI engine that's looking for similarities in time series. Our approach to AI is based upon what's called a deterministic model. And this Smartscape actually gives us a window into how that deterministic model works. A deterministic AI has a model. It has a view of the world. And we chose this approach because of the work that we had been seeing at NASA, the US Department of Defense, the FAA, because deterministic AI immediately lends itself to fault domain isolation. And once you've got a model or a view of the world, all of your data just fits into it automatically. No learning, no configuration required. So what Brendan was showing us here, you can see the hierarchical understanding over on the left-hand side. We know that applications, they run on top of services. Services run on top of processes. Processes run on top of hosts, and hosts exist within data centers. Now, we use these terms very, very loosely. For example, a host could be bare metal. It could be a virtual machine. It could be perhaps a node in a Kubernetes deployment. So the whole concept here, though, is that we have this hierarchical understanding out of the box. Then on top of that, every entity that we look at, we understand the horizontal relationships and dependencies at the service, the process, and the host level. So what that means is that I know exactly when one entity is talking to another. And since we're baselining metrics off of every one of these entities, what's then happening is whenever there's a performance bottleneck, whenever there's errors, whenever there are exceptions, if they're impacting things to a point where it's triggering one of our anomaly detection rules, we automatically then can create a problem card from that. Okay, Brendan, take it away from there, bud.
Thanks, Josie. Yeah,
You bet.
and on those problem cards, you can actually see the red amount of the services here. So it outlines this issue. And also, if I go back to the dashboard, you can see there's actually one problem here. So if I drill into that further, you can actually see the current ongoing issues, if there's any past issues as well. But I actually have one from earlier that I brought up that I want to share because I thought it was a good use case for this. So just like Jonesy said, the AI baselined all of the normal operating procedures of the applications, and we got some synthetic scripts as well. So it really brought that all together into this one problem card is what we call it. So you can see it affects two applications. There's multiple problems. There's not just one issue, and all of the infected entities as well. Now, in the top right here, this used to have a much bigger number, but since what they've done is kind of carved it down to the monitored entities. So automatically, there's almost 13,000 analyzed dependencies by our Davis AI, or Dynatrace's Davis AI. So that's pretty amazing, and you can think how much manual work it would take to bring out all those dependencies and say, okay, what did this problem affect? Who did it affect? What are we looking at here in terms of impact from a technical standpoint and a business standpoint? So that's what really comes together on this page, and why it's so important to show. So you can see the business impact analysis here and the potential users that were affected, and even drilling down into exactly where those users were being affected, and I'll drill into that more later. But just to continue on the page, you can see the 4 impacted entities. So there was a certain HTTP monitor, which is going out and pinging a server, for example. And you can see which ones was affected. It ended up being a request timeout there. And you can analyze that execution if you want. So you can always drill down from this page. And as we go on more, here's really what I love to show off. So there's a user action degradation. So what that means is essentially the response time increased. So what Davis did is it auto-detected that the baseline of the user actions were approximately 600 milliseconds. And in our current case, it raised to almost 2.3 seconds, which is a significant increase. But users may not complain about that, but still a significant increase, and it alerted you to, hey, this isn't normal. And it also did that for other user actions here as well. So you can see there's 5 different ones, and if you drill in, you can see exactly which user actions. Was it on a search? Was it on a checkout? Was it in a specific region or on a specific browser? All those great details can be looked into here. And then the last thing it noticed, a browser monitor. So we actually have synthetic monitors going through the page and making sure that the application is performing as expected. And as you can see, a certain HTML element cannot be found. And you can drill down into this, and maybe the page didn't load fully, and you can look into all those great details. So a wide breadth of information. But I'd say one of the most important things on the problem card is the root cause section. So this is going to tell you what the issue is. So instead of doing the guesswork, is it the network? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the load balancer? What's going on here? Dynatrace was able to detect that it's actually this check destination service that's having the issue, that's causing CPU saturation on these two hosts, and it was related to a deployment. And we know it was related to a deployment thanks to an integration we can do with ServiceNow. So this is all about the tools and platforms that we have talking to each other and making sure that we're getting context for all of this data that we have. Because if you have data explosion, what are you going to do with it all if there's no context? So here you can see, who the approver was, Alice McBride, who the owner was, and all the different remediation steps that were taken. So in this case, an Ansible playbook was run, possibly to reverse the deployment. And after that is presumably when it returned to normal. So this one happened, I believe, overnight at 3 a.m. So I've been on late night deployments, 3 a.m. No one wants to be on those. But if you're automating those things, this is where Dynatrace can really help. Because you can see how the deployment, it didn't meet the criteria, it was causing issues, and it was rolled back, and you can review it in the morning. You can get a full night's sleep and come back fully refreshed to check on this. So it's really amazing. And then beyond that, you can actually go down and look at the code level there. So I'll drill into this just before going to the bottom. But this is an amazing view into which part exactly was having the issue. So say if I clicked into the response time, the service execution, you see that the code execution is taking longer. Maybe something wasn't done optimally. And then you click on view method hotspots, and you can see exactly where that time is being taken. So you can now know exactly where to focus in your code on this specific method, on why it was taking longer. So
that's, like Brendan, every time I see that, it amazes me. The fact of the matter is that what we did was we just ran an installer for that one agent onto a bunch of servers, and then we walked away. We didn't really do anything. And Dynatrace's AI was able to detect that, hey, here's a problem. And not only here's the problem, this is the root cause of the problem. And not only here's the root cause of the problem, here's the specific methods within the code that are causing that. And it didn't require any configuration. It literally just worked out of the box. So you can imagine that when Brendan and I are working with customers, people that have, deployed Dynatrace, the feedback that we get all the time is just, people are incredulous that they've never seen software actually do what Dynatrace can do. And so, this just really sort of emphasizes that. So great job so far, Brendan. Keep going, bud.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonesy. Yeah, and a lot of times, sometimes, and you can tell from the problem card the response time, but some interesting stuff. You can even see if it's the network I/O, and that would be highlighted up here as well. And as we were seeing before, the code execution. But if it was suspended or is waiting on disk or network, you'd be able to see that here as well. So.
Actually, hold on a second, Brendan. Let's just chat about that for a little bit more, because herein lies the issue when applications start to go awry. in this particular scenario, so not only is Dynatrace showing you that, hey, this method is causing the problem, but it's giving you some indication as to what the nature of why that method is having an issue. And so I've seen situations where, the method is showing us that it's slow, but that slowness is related to, let's just say, network IO. And in that particular case, it's because, more often than not, people are unaware that at the network level, your web servers, when they're running on, some, infrastructure, some hardware, whatever it might be, there is typically with those web servers a finite number of connections that they could be allowed to make at any given point in time. Now, if those connections are saturated, if those connections are staying open longer than they need to, all of a sudden that connection pool gets filled. And so now we have this, behavior that we see inside of Dynatrace that's showing us that, hey, these method calls, they're waiting around for these network connections to free up. And so in this scenario, that what Brendan's talking about here, the fact that we can show things like, if the method is actually waiting, if the issue is related to disk IO, is it a slow disk? Is the issue related to network IO? Is there a problem because the number of ports is just saturated, and whatever's trying to connect to it can't make those connections, or it's slow closing those connections? Those are all things that can impact how your applications work. And Dynatrace provides insights to allow you to, really get to what's causing the issue. Awesome. Keep going, Brendan. Sorry, bud. It's just you caught me at a moment where I was just looking at that, going, okay, so what's the so what about this? And the so what is just it's just what I was explaining.
Yeah, I can even relate these back to business value is what we like to do, and of course, say we ended up having a network issue, like you said, at a certain customer, and what ended up happening is there's a marketing push and everyone's clicking the link at the same time from their phones, from their emails, and all the connections get filled up and people aren't able to connect to the website, or it's slow loading. So that has an effect on your reputation, on your brand. You want users to be able to go to your website and see the newest brand new thing that you just pushed out. So this really gives you insight into why it's happening, and then you can jump on and fix it.
Yeah. And so here's the crux of the issue. Mm-hmm. And Brendan, go down to the visual resolution playback. Okay? Because what happens when the scenario that Brendan just talked about, where a company is they've got a marketing campaign, and all of a sudden they're getting this really odd behavior. Well, all of a sudden your marketing campaign is not getting the results that you wanted. Everyone gets into a war room to discuss it, right? And so everyone's got their own set of tools. You've got your infrastructure people, they've got their tools. You've got your application people, they've got their tools. You've got your database people, they got their tools. You got, your external web team that's got their tools. You got the guys that are managing the logs, and they've got their own set of tools. And the challenge is that everyone's tools are telling them, hey, no, we're good. There's no problem here. But still the problem exists for the end user. And so everyone's pointing fingers at each other. And with Dynatrace, rather than getting into a costly war room scenario, or having to try to recreate the problem, or taking your most talented resources and have them sift through log files to find the issue, with Dynatrace, you just simply get that root cause. And so this, one of our colleagues, Jason Bortolotti, he used a really great sort of example to describe what this does. This is the visual resolution playback, and I'll let Brendan explain it and demonstrate it in a moment. But it's like Dynatrace is creating a virtual whiteboard for you, showing you the nature of the problem. So go ahead, Brendan, and just walk people through this.
Awesome, sure. So, as Jonesy said, no need to ask a user to recreate the issue, or retelling exactly what happened, how did it happen, trying to figure that out. Eliminating all the guesswork is really what this does. And so if I pause this even at the height of the issue, A point I like to bring up here is we have 73 ongoing events in 16 different components. Now, what this does is it condenses it into one problem card. Instead of having 73 different alerts, it's now just one, because Dynatrace recognizes, hey, this is all part of the same issue. Everything's talking to each other. This is how it works. And this is all part of the same issue. So only one alert needs to get sent out. And as it goes through here, you can see at the height of the issue, everything that's been affected, from the website down to Tomcat, down to Nginx, Apache, all the way down to the hosts where the CPU gets saturated. And then as we play back, the website starts to go green, CPU saturation starts to heal, and we can see the whole system going green again. So it's really an awesome view into what exactly happened, what was affected, in giving you that context of saying, okay, these user actions were affected at this time, and here's all the components technical as well. Just bringing that business related to technical and really bridging the gap in that, because a host is down or the website's down. Okay, that's from a technical standpoint. Certain people care about technical aspects, and from the business side, they care about other things like, are users still able to make purchases, or are users still able to refill medications, depending on what your company does. So either way, it's important to understand what's going on.
Got it. That's awesome, Brendan. Hey, listen, so we've got some questions coming in, and they look like there's some really specific questions. So this is a great time to sort of talk about things. Here, this question coming in from I'm gonna say Rajan. Rajan, I apologize, I'm not getting your full name in there, but Rajan's asking this question, and I think I've got an idea as to what's going on here. So effectively what Rajan's asking is, inside of Dynatrace, when you're looking at a host, there is a set number of metrics that are available there. Actually, Brendan, go ahead and open up, if you don't mind, open up a view into a host.
Sure.
And let's just pick, you know what? Let's first start with, as an example, go ahead and pick one of those Windows boxes right there. Yeah, that's a good example. So right here inside of this view of Dynatrace, this data is coming to us from the one agent that's installed on this particular host or server. And you can see these in the infographic. You can see that there's CPU, there's memory, there's network IO, and there's disk. And so what Rajan is asking about is, on the network side, he doesn't seem to see some metrics there. And this is a very interesting scenario, because in this case, this host is being run on a VMware ESX cluster. So this is being run on Tanzu, right? This is basically a Windows VM that's being run there. Now, Brendan, go back to the host view, and let's filter these hosts and see if we can't find one of the hosts that is in fact actually a Azure web server or web service host. So let's see if we can filter on this. And let's see here. Keep going. Nope, not Bosch. No. Actually, if you go over and actually filter on the operating system over on the left-hand side there.
Sure.
We should be able to see one. Hold on a second here. I'm going to make this full screen so I can see it. Actually, is everyone having an okay time seeing the detail on this? Because it's looking a little washed out for me.
I can zoom in.
There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, that's a little bit better. So let's now just scroll down into this list. Just keep going down a bit here. There you go. See that? Let's try the Azure website. That's the what I was looking for there. Okay, see the three at the bottom? Yeah, go into that one.
Okay.
So you'll notice here in this particular case that we're still looking at the host. The agent's deployed here, but in this particular example, you'll see that a couple of those metrics are missing. And so in this scenario, the reason those metrics are missing is because of the nature of what that host is. In this case, because this is an Azure web app, the network side and the disk side, that type of information is not exposed in this particular case to the agent, and that's why they're not showing up. So in this case, Rajan, to answer your question, whatever you're looking at, if it's not showing up, I would ask, we would want to know what was the actual nature of what was running. Is it a PaaS environment? And if it's a PaaS environment, that's probably a pretty good indicator that some of those metrics are just simply going to be obfuscated and they're just not available to the agent in that particular case because of the nature of the way that that application and that host is being run. So very good question. That is, a really, really interesting question. What else do we got here? Do we have any other questions? And folks, if you've got other questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat window here. What do we got? Any other questions? Nope. Well, let's just keep going with the demo then, Brendan. Let's see. So we were talking about the problem card.
Yeah.
And now it's probably a pretty good time, Brendan. Let's, just for the sake of time, let's actually drill into some of the real user metrics that are coming off of Dynatrace.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking as well. So
cool. Right on.
I was looking at sessions, to show some good data here. So this is an example of what we get from the digital experience monitoring, or DEM as we call it. So you get a bunch of that good information where you can see the operating system, geolocation, what browser they're on, the IP address. And we can actually pull out real user identifiers from the metadata, such as a cookie or a request header, things like that. And so you're able to find exactly which users were affected. If a user calls in, or even the user may call in and you can say, we're already working on the issue. We've seen it already. So that's a great thing to be able to say. And under those, you can see all the steps over time that the user has taken. So you can see the list of, they loaded the Easy Travel search page, and it was frustrating here. It took 16.5 seconds. Of course, that'd be frustrating for anybody. And it's going through a whole journey of the web page here. So really you have that full visibility into each and every action that your user does. And something cool about that is we also have a feature called Session Replay. So you have the actions, you have the details into those, but what about seeing it firsthand? So with Session Replay, let's get it full in view here, you're able to actually play back what the user was experiencing. So you can see as it's going along, it's just spinning, loading, and you can see it's actually red for that error and annoyances page there. And then finally the page loads, and they go through here and can continue on the website as normal. It looks like they had a fairly average visit after that. Everything's loading as expected. And you can see as it continues here that actually some of this form data is start out. So say if someone was entering credit card information or, social insurance number, anything confidential like that, we gray it out by default. And confidentiality is important. We're I believe it's GDPR compliant. Hopefully I said the acronym right, but you can see it there, credit card, all grayed out. Yeah, that's really amazing. So this is what helps in having to say, we don't have to call that user back and have them recreate what they did and then have to recreate it in a lab ourselves. You're able to see it fully here and watch it back in plain view. So that's a feature that I really love there. And a few other things on this page. Now, this is more a little more configuration, but you're able to attach properties to this session. So you're able to say, okay, the username for this was Monica Taylor. You're also able to bring in Adobe attributes if you're using another Adobe tool. You're able to attach revenue to it. Because this was involved in a purchase, we are able to say, okay, this was the revenue that was generated from this customer. If they have a loyalty status, none versus silver, gold, platinum, making sure it's not or it is or isn't one of your top tier customers. So it's really giving you all of that contextual information that the business would be asking and your developers and DevOps would be asking, all in one place. That's really the strength here. And part of that technology part, if we explain this, is again breaking down where the time is being spent. So if we go into this waterfall, you're able to actually see how the page was loaded and where the errors occurred. So say for this page right here, you can see that most of the time was taken in processing. And you may say, okay, what's processing? Well, we have a handy little legend down at the bottom. And if we look for processing, the time between DOM loading and load event start. So just give more clarification on that. And you're able to see that for every attribute.
And Brendan, just to put that into context then, processing typically is the processing that's occurring on the client side, on the browser side. Okay, so that's the usefulness of these types of metrics. Now, sometimes you need a little domain expertise to interpret exactly what that means. And so processing time, that's typically a client side issue. So we're literally waiting for how much time is it taking that browser to execute that JavaScript and execute those functions.
Awesome. Yeah.
Keep going, man. Oh, we got some really okay. As soon as you're done here, Brendan, we got a bunch of questions, and these look like some pretty technical ones. So we'll get to those in a moment, folks. Okay, just please be patient while we just sort of finish up here. So keep going, Brendan.
Yeah, for sure. So you're able to see, okay, where is the time being spent? And you can see specifically the special offers is taking 14 seconds. So, okay, now we have a particular request and the time is being spent in the request phase. So what you can actually do is drill down into what Dynatrace calls a pure path, which is our name for a distributed trace. So if I open this up here, you're only one click away from viewing that code level data. So now you went from a business user context back to the code side. So here you're able to see each node as it passed through your services and the details into those as well. So if we click on the top one, you're able to get all this lovely information. So yeah, it's all really, really convenient in the way that Dynatrace is laid out, and I just love the flows because they're so easy to follow.
Now, I don't think it's actually turned on for this demonstration, for this particular instance, but you'll notice that when we were back on that previous screen looking at the details, that there's a new tab there, and that new tab shows logs. And so what's fabulous about that is that we actually are using trace IDs to actually decorate the log files. It's not turned on for this particular example, but
Gotcha.
Basically what that allows you to do is I could be within a log entry, and if I have the appropriate trace ID, I could actually navigate to the pure path and the user action that it was attached to, and I can go back and forth. So I can literally now be saying, here's a user, the user's doing something, and now what we can do is we can see the log entries that are actually being written out from that user, whatever that user might be doing. So this is new functionality. This just came out in the past month or so. We're really super excited. We know that it's going to make people's lives a lot easier moving forward. Keep going, sure. Brendan.
Yeah, that's the what you can see here is kind of the I guess they'd be called spans, the different services here as the trace goes through, and all the way down to the database. So you're actually able to see the database calls without without necessarily going into the database process. The way, it works is if the application is instrumented, it notices those database calls and will actually show that in the peer path. So, you can still get the infrastructure metrics from a database server, but, getting and understanding the queries, if there's, indexing issues or a long running query, you're able to see that here as well. So it looks like all these are running quickly, and you're able really to deduce, okay, which method is taking me the longest here. So and again, lots of good information. So you can see we're pulling out client IPs and tracking ID numbers, things like that. So yeah.
And let's just take a pause again, because this, again, what you've shown us really kind of still blows my mind. What Brendan just walked us through was, we were looking at a real user session. We were looking at a user opening up something within their browser, and within a couple of clicks, Brendan is actually now down into, a pure path, which is effectively a collection of spans and traces. And so now, if you think of the world in the terms of observability, what we've done is pretty amazing, because we've actually connected the end user to those traces. We see all of those spans. We've got access into the logs and all of those metrics that are being collected. So if you're familiar with observability, being able to do this out of the box by just pushing some buttons and not having to do any configurations, no complex deployments, no complex instrumentation, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
So Brendan, look, we've got a couple of questions, and we've got about 14, 15 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's go in and actually look at some more of these questions. So Rajan actually replied back after we explained what we had been saying about how, depending upon the nature of the, depending upon the nature of the host that is being used for that application, the way in which those metrics can be displayed can change. So that's all well and good, but Rajan explained that they had seen those metrics before, and now they're not there. So without looking at your instance, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the different things that could potentially change what you had been seeing. I would think that one of the things you would want to look into, and Brendan, pull up a host inside of Dynatrace here, and let's go into say one of those first two Windows hosts again. All right, and go into the settings. So one of the things that might have happened, and I'm just off the top of my head sort of thinking about what could affect metrics that are being that you had seen before and now you're not seeing them. One of the things that could happen is that somebody could have turned off the monitoring for that, and this actually shows. And it's a good question to show the configurability of the actual agent itself. If you scroll down through this list, there is, in fact, on this list, there is a option for, I believe it's called like Network Insights. And if Network Insights is, in fact, turned off, or the network monitoring is turned off, then that is one of the things that could explain why you're not seeing metrics in your particular instance. I would think that, if that is not the case, if it's not that somebody's gone ahead and turned off the network traffic monitoring, or they've affected it in some way, give your Dynatrace, your either your customer service rep, or talk to your sales engineer, or even use the chat in the upper right hand corner of the screen and ask the question there. So just feel free to use those those options. Reach out to your customer service rep, your sales engineer. Use the online chat and ask that question if it in fact isn't what I just mentioned. All right, so we have another question here from a user called UACNIX. Okay, I didn't get anyone's real name there, but. Is it possible to aggregate multiple services with the same name scattered on multiple nodes, in this case, a web methods integration server, into one entity? And so I would say that the answer to that is, yeah, you can do that. In many cases, Dynatrace may, in fact, actually do that out of the box. And this is how Dynatrace creates something that we call a process group. So, Brendan, let's head over to the technology screen, and let's walk through an example of a process group. So, in this particular scenario here, if we go into, say, like the .NET processes, yep, right there. And if we scroll down now, so this is a list of logical process groups. These are like types of processes that have been grouped together. So Dynatrace, for the most part, tries to do this by itself. And so in this case here, if you click into the details for any one of these, and let's use one like, well, let's try this one.
Sure.
The one that you just opened. Let's try it. And if we scroll down, there's how many? Oh, there's only one in here. So in this case, what we're looking for is a process group that actually has multiple processes in it across multiple servers. That's typically, and Brendan will click around and try to find one here. I think actually if we, no, keep going down and, what do we got here? Try something like, something that's got some metric, like that one. Let's try that one. Why not?
Sure.
Let's give this a try. And we click into this guy. We scroll down. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. Yeah. So we've got 3 different processes running on 3 different servers in this particular case. But Dynatrace has logically grouped them together. Now, if there was a service running on top of this process group, all of those requests would, in fact, actually be grouped together. Now, Dynatrace, for the most part, will do this automatically. However, if Dynatrace hasn't done this and you want to group them together in some other ways, what you can do is, if you go into the settings, so Brendan, let's go over to the settings. And in the settings, there is a section for processes and containers. And in here, what you can do is, under the process group, you can create different rules in here. And these rules will allow you to basically, if you want, group things together. So you can actually set up a set of rules to actually group together like types of processes into a process group. And then you can also do this, and you can create rules on the services side as well. So if Dynatrace, typically it tries to do this out of the box without you having to do anything. But, there's an infinite number of different ways that applications can be run. And so, sometimes Dynatrace doesn't do it the way that, you want to do it. And so that's why we provide these rules here to actually merge services together, to merge processes into process groups. So you might want to investigate looking at these settings to actually try to achieve what you were talking about there. All right, what else do we got here? Why Dynatrace doesn't capture all transactions sometimes. We cross-checked with application team, and for example, they see 1,000 transactions in the database, but you can only see a number of process requests. This is actually this is an interesting question. So in that scenario, you're saying that there's 1,000 transactions that are occurring at the database level, 1,000 requests to the database, but you're only seeing 200 traces in that time. So in this particular case, it could be for a couple of reasons. And what I'm thinking is, off the top of my head, let's go into the database view. So let's go into infrastructure. Nope, sorry, it's not infrastructure. It's under applications. Databases, right there. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so in this scenario here, we're looking at the databases. And one of the interesting things that Dynatrace can do is, and let's drill into that first database there, the Oracle database. Okay, this is an Oracle database that is running as an RDS instance inside of AWS. So in this scenario here, there is no Dynatrace One agent that's monitoring this database. As a matter of fact, the One agent doesn't monitor the databases. What the Dynatrace agent does is it views the transactions that are flowing through the application layer making their way to the database. So there's a couple of different things that might be happening as to why you're not seeing the number of transactions that you're expecting. If you're looking straight at the database, okay, Dynatrace's view of the requests going off to the database are only happening, it's only coming through our introspection of the JDBC or ADO.NET connections. So in that scenario, we're looking at the application tier and we're basically saying, hey, here's a request going off to the database. And we're capturing it there. That database may have requests that are coming into it from other things that are not being monitored by Dynatrace, that the agent doesn't have visibility into because maybe it's not installed there, maybe the technology is not something that Dynatrace traces through. So that's one explanation as to why those numbers don't match. The other thing is that I don't know exactly, and this is true with anything. Specificity really, really matters when we're having these types of conversations. So I don't know exactly what it's meant by there's 1,000 requests being made or transactions being made to the database. Those could be individual requests to the database. They could be talking about transactions at a higher level. If, in this particular case, if we're talking about the requests going into the database, there could be all transactions at the app server end, and it's completely monitored. Okay, so maybe then what we're saying here is that there might be multiple requests that are coming into the database per transaction. And how would we know that? You see that in that pure path. So when Brendan was showing us the pure path earlier, we saw that one transaction, one request, actually had multiple touches to the database, right? So in that particular scenario, Dynatrace is aware of that. We know that there's multiple touches going to the database, even knowing this is one pure path, one transaction. So in this scenario, and you can see here, there's two. Like here in just this branch, there are 2 requests going off to the database. So there's a number of different ways inside of Dynatrace that you can actually parse down and see how many requests are happening to the database. So for example, if you go to the details view right here in the breadcrumb bar, so let's go up to the blue breadcrumb bar and click on details. No, that's fine, man. And so here, if we wait for this to show, if we scroll down now a little bit, and let's click on more, we have all these options that are available for us to do this type of analysis. But what we want to do here is let's click on the review response time hotspots. By doing this is a special analysis that allows us to see things like here, we can see interactions with queues and services. Now it's telling us that this particular request has no direct database usage. It's actually happening downstream. But in this case here, if I click on that interaction with queues and services, this is a good illustration. So here, what we get to see is a breakdown of the number of requests that are occurring between the different service layers. And as I start to trace down into this, I start to actually see if there are multiple requests that are being made, downstream. The other way of looking at this is if we go back to that database view that we were looking at before. So let's go back to that. Yeah, we're here in this database view. Let's go and let's look at, see the current hotspots. That's an example of a specific individual request that's being made to the database. Here, if you click on that, we can see the details around it. And if we scroll down and on the right-hand side of the details, keep going. There we go. On the right-hand side of the details of that request, I can click on the ellipsis there. And actually, this is a good summary here because you can actually see the number of total executions, the total time. But what I can do is I can click on that ellipsis. Sorry, you had just done it. And I can do a backtrace from here. And so now by making this, by using this backtrace, I can see that there are, in fact, actually, what we have to the database, there's 11,281 requests to the database, but that's coming from, in this particular case, if we go upstream, we've got how many, okay, this is the incoming requests. That's coming from 1,700 incoming requests from that front end service, right? So the whole idea is that you can, traverse up and down that sort of, view from the database to your transactions. And you could find out, is there a situation where a individual transaction is actually spawning multiple connections or requests to the database. And so when you're trying to, your team is saying, hey, we've got all these requests coming into the database. How do I go back and actually reconcile that with the numbers that are showing up in Dynatrace? This might be one of the ways that you could do that. And looks like someone set up that custom name service. It works flawlessly. There you go. Absolutely. That's worth the price of admission today, just for that alone. So that, you know what? We're at the top of the hour, and let's end on that happy note, because that, I think, is a good example of why getting to know Dynatrace sessions are so popular and so useful. So with that, folks, thank you very much for attending this session of Getting to Know Dynatrace. Brendan, thank you so much, man. You just did a fabulous and excellent job doing that demonstration. And thank you, everyone, for asking those questions. Those are, really good questions, really good discussion points.
Thank you,
and
Joe.
With that, you're very welcome, Brendan. Absolutely, folks. So with that, thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you next time on Getting to Know Dynatrace.
Our baggage system just crashed.
Oh no, who's responsible for this?
Who's responsible for this?
Get Dynatrace, observability and AI ops to automate your cloud. See how at Dynatrace.com.